My students for their accomplishments this year. I'm Samantha Wilkerson, the JAG specialist at Free State High School. For those of you that aren't familiar with JAG, it is Jobs for America's Graduates, and it's a career exploration and preparation program that targets students with barriers to graduation. JAG helps students explore their personal strengths and challenges while providing job and life skills in the classroom. The main goal of JAG is to help students graduate and then guide them through the transition from high school into post-secondary education or an entry-level job. One unique aspect of the program is the Career Association, which is a student-led club that gives students various opportunities for leadership roles. As class officers, students are able to attend 2 of our statewide conferences, and that's what we're here tonight to recognize. Is one of our students, Dacia Starr, is a class officer. She's her class president for JAG. Our other student, Gabriel Smith, was not able to attend tonight. He's at wrestling practice. But we are here to recognize their accomplishments at the Leadership Development Conference in October, where they competed against students from JAG programs across the state. Gabe, who couldn't be here tonight, competed in the Employability Skills event, where he had a mock interview with a judge who later turned out to be our CEO and president of JAG Kansas, Chuck Knapp. Gabe didn't know that at the time. He also had to provide a resume and a letter of application, and he did such a good job that he won that event at the state level. Dacia competed in the math skills event, where she had an hour to take a timed math test, and I believe she only missed 4 questions. But she ended up winning her event as well. In total, there were 12 students from Kansas that qualified to attend this National Student Leadership Academy in Washington, D.C. The 3 elected state officers, a president, vice president, and secretary, and the top 3 in each of the 3 competitions, the math skills, employability skills, and public speaking. Gabe and Dacia qualified by not only placing, but winning 2 of those 3 events. And I was lucky enough to accompany these 2 individuals on their trip as they competed at the national level in Washington, D.C., amongst 900 some students. And although nobody from Kansas placed, I have no doubt that Gabe and Dacia both gave their best effort. And I'm incredibly proud of their accomplishments this year in JAG and how well they've represented our school and our community. And I would like to wish Dacia the best of luck at Washburn University, where she has accepted a softball scholarship, and look forward to having Gabe next year as a senior in the JAG program. He's already preparing to run for state vice president next year. But I thank you for giving us the opportunity to, like I said, once again, recognize these students for their accomplishments. So, thank you.
Congratulations.
Okay, the next item of business is the board action following executive session. Do we have a motion?
I'd like to make the motion. The employee who was the subject of the pending investigation has submitted his resignation. Therefore, I move the Board of Education accept the resignation effective at the end of the 2016-2017 school year and extend his administrative leave for the duration of the school year.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Janice?
Do we
Oh, sorry. So, no, we did not have any comments specifically for this. If anybody in the audience wanted to speak directly to this item that didn't sign up, just checking to make sure that's not the case before we take the vote. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Next item is the report of the president. I don't have anything this evening, so I'll hand it over to Kyle.
Give me a second here. Okay, just a few things to talk about. The Douglas County Community Foundation and Live Well Lawrence recently awarded several grants to our district, including funding for our Farm to School program, Quarterly School Garden, Lawrence High's Fit Club, and a second bike blast fleet for our elementary physical education program. If you remember, that group was in front of us just a few months ago. So that's a good thing. In addition, Live Well Lawrence presented Culture of Health Action Awards to Denise Johnson, our Health and Wellness Coordinator, and Cornelius Bell, Liberty Memorial Central Middle School's Parent Involvement Facilitator. Congratulations to Denise and Cornelius and all the staff involved with those programs, because they definitely benefit a lot of our students. Congratulations to Free State High FFA members Blake Wagner and Delaney Stone and Mason Fowler for placing 2nd, 6th, and 7th in the East Central District Job Interview Contest. They completed cover letters, resumes, job applications, and interviews. Blake Wagner will advance to compete in the Kansas FFA State Job Interview Contest in May. Congratulations also to the Think Tanks, a first LEGO League team of 5 fifth graders, 4 from Quail Run and 1 from Pinckney, who qualified for the first LEGO League championship. That's what's especially cool about that, actually, is that the elementary team worked with high school students. So they were mentored by high school students, and those were members of the, if you remember, Team STEAM Robotics group that was in front of us. So a nice partnership there. New York School's Student Leaders Club collected the most used eyeglasses, earning a trophy in the Recycle for Sight program, sponsored by the City of Lawrence Waste Reduction and Recycling Department, the Lawrence Arts Center, and the Lions Club. 8 of our schools participated, collecting 165 pairs of glasses to celebrate America Recycles Day. Speaking of recycling, the City of Lawrence has invited us to attend a brief award ceremony at 4 o'clock tomorrow. It's in the Lawrence Public Library Auditorium for the announcement of the city's Star Sustainability Certification Score. We partnered with the city on this application because it indicates a citywide look at sustainability efforts, including the energy efficiency improvements we have made in all of our buildings, our Farm to School program, our environmentally safe custodial maintenance, and facilities and grounds practices, among other efforts, including a lot of the work we did through our bond construction. The information we gathered for the city is actually a step in the right direction for us because it aligns with a board goal centered around sustainability and investigating the current practices that we have. The district will host 2 informational nights for students in grades 4 through 12 and their parents to learn more about participating in the local regional science and engineering fairs. These informational nights will be held from 6 to 7 on December 5th and 6th here at the district office. If you remember, we've contracted with Patron Insight to conduct a scientific telephone survey to collect community input about our facilities master planning on our secondary schools and the potential for a bond election in the future. So if you're a community member out there that is receiving calls, we appreciate that you take the time to talk to them. It's going to happen a lot in the next couple weeks, and then we would have the survey information coming back to us on December 12th at that board meeting. Board lunch tomorrow, reminder, is at Lawrence High, and it's at 12 noon. I think there may have been some information that said it was 11:30, but it's at 12 o'clock tomorrow at Lawrence High. So this is a joint presentation that includes Lawrence High, Free State, College and Career Center, the virtual school, and adult ed. The topic of the presentation is around the board goals centered around the educational program we offer our high school students, evaluation of courses, graduation requirements, and then looking at how we are preparing our students' college and career readiness, and also resource allocation. So a lot of combined efforts with that presentation. So if you can make it, I'd appreciate it. That's it.
Thanks, Kyle. Next item is the patron commentary, audience participation. So just read, we actually rewrote the guidelines, so we'll read them here for the first time tonight. USD 497 Board of Education appreciates patrons taking time to talk to us about our policies and procedures. We set aside this time during every meeting to hear from the public. This is your time to share your opinions, but we ask that you avoid making comments of a personal nature about any district employee or student, including the use of personal names. While you're not required to share your contact information, we ask that you do so we can follow up with any specific concerns you might have. In such cases, a board member, the superintendent, or another staff member may be in touch with you to refer your concerns to the appropriate administrator for investigation. At that time, we encourage you to share as many details relative to your specific concerns as you're willing to share. And we ask that you limit your comments to 5 minutes if possible. And thank you for sharing your thoughts about policies and procedures with the board. So the first person that's signed up for tonight is Kara Smith.
I'm Kara Smith.
Sorry.
That's okay. And I am a learning coach in Woodlawn and New York elementary schools. This is my 4th year in the school district, my 14th year as an educator. And Lawrence is my 7th school district that I've worked in. So I told you all that because I want you to know that I've been in education for a little bit, as many of you have. And so in education, every district I've gone to, there's some new initiative that's going to change education dramatically, right? It's going to change everything that we do. And so with that, some people get on board and some people wait it out to see where it's going to go and what's going to happen, and probably it'll fizzle away. And when I interviewed for this position, I was so excited that they were asking me so many questions about racial equity. And culturally relevant teaching practices, and what was I going to do as a learning coach to make sure that that was happening in schools and with teachers. And I was like, wow, I have to be in this district. I'd never, ever had a district talk to me about those things before, and I was sold on it. And so I moved my life to Lawrence, and my child goes to Lawrence Public Schools. She's in 4th grade. And I feel like many other things, equity is being treated as an initiative. And I feel like I'm speaking my truth. There are many people in this district that are waiting it out to see when it's just going to go away because they're not on board. And I don't know what to do about that. I don't know. I'm just here to tell you guys that I feel that. As the years have progressed, especially this year, I feel like equity's just, let's check that off for this month at the staff meeting, or let's make sure we said something about it so that we can move on. I feel like our training is being pulled away from us more and more. I feel like it's unrealistic for E-teams that many of the people that I've spoken with just barely realized they had white privilege, and then to ask these people to then go share that with other people when they're just barely starting their journey is a little bit unrealistic. I don't know how to change that, and I don't proclaim to know what system would be better or how we could make that differently, but I'm just here to tell you that it doesn't feel like it matters. It feels like Lucy Calkins or Reading Street or another positive action lesson that I have to log in the W drive. Like, do you guys even know what I mean by all that? So it just feels like we're just going to do this and then it's going to go away eventually. And I'm concerned. I'm concerned that I don't even know that I want to be around educators that are being forced to do this, because we don't want to force people into equity work, right? Because this is a mindset. This is not a initiative. This is not the next reading curriculum. These are people's lives that we're talking about and their livelihoods. And we're asking people that just barely became conscious about their own privilege to go and share this or convince other people that don't even really get it or don't want to get it, or for whatever reason they're not invested in it. I'm afraid that it's just going to go away. And I just wanted to tell you guys that because that's how it feels. it feels like it's just going to be gone soon. It's important to me that it doesn't go away. And it's important to a lot of kids in this district, not just your kids of color. It is so important that it doesn't go away. So please don't let it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next person is Lauren Mitchell.
Hi. My name is Lauren Mitchell. I'm a parent in this district to a child, and I'm also a fourth grade teacher and equity leader at Kennedy Elementary. So I came up here to talk to you about two things. First, my love and passion for what I do, and second, my frustrations with this district's equity efforts. My hope that as I speak these words, you will be able to hear and connect with the love that I have for teaching and for the students that I get the opportunity to teach. The more that I engage in equity, the more I realize I don't know, and the more I see the immensity of the work that has to be done. I would like to challenge you to lean into the discomfort that you may feel, or the discomfort, frustration, and anger that you might hear tonight. So with that being said, I am frustrated. I am really frustrated. As a white, cisgendered, opposite gender loving woman, I am making the choice to engage because I believe that equity work, racial justice work, is the single most important job that schools must do. I am frustrated because I feel this way and I don't see action. How can we, as a district, have equity as one of the 3 E's? And yet we have one person, our District Equity TOSA, to meet the needs of 20 traditional learning buildings on their equity journeys. I realize that there is a district leadership team, but I have never seen and I have never heard from them. And I've been in this district for 6 years. I believe it is incredibly unrealistic for our district to assume that this one person can give the E-teams, the equity teams, what they need to push staff on their journeys, regardless of the tremendous effort, talent, and capability that this person does have. And if we were to pause and think about whom those E-teams are made up of, I would venture to guess that many are teachers and staff that in some cases have just or not even fully realized their own white privilege, because we are a district that has mostly white staff members. To expect them to facilitate and guide staff from anywhere to 50 to 100 persons is a daunting task. Yes, I wrote a lot. I am frustrated because I feel like other courses of action are being fully staffed and funded. For example, our CI3T team has gone to multiple PDs already this school year and this summer, but equity doesn't. And there have been 2 half-days this year, or there's just been 1 half-day so far. Another one is in the spring. But if the district is putting in the hands of the E-team the responsibility to move and push and further the journeys of staff members, that is not enough. It's unrealistic that an E-team would be able to facilitate, which in all senses of the word means train, a staff when they themselves are not getting training, nor are they getting guidance on how to facilitate these professional developments that are supposed to be happening. At our last elementary PD day, myself and a coworker, we led a 45-minute session on engaging staff and students with courageous conversations. We were at capacity. There was 50 people in that room. I'm not saying this to brag or boast, but I want you to know that I think teachers want this. I think they do. And the district is not providing for them. And as wonderful as it is that I'm able to show them what I'm doing, I know that I don't know enough. I am not an expert. So I'm asking for renewed commitment. I need a commitment from every single principal that this work is valued and that their staff is not going to be able to schedule dentist appointments and haircuts and meetings during equity professional development if they are even having it, which I believe is not happening on a consistent basis in this district. It should not be at the end of a 10-minute session at the end of a staff meeting. And I need you to know that having a principal that values this work is instrumental in moving forward. And I have had this. I have this. And because I have this, I have been able to be at trainings that my principal has put us through on her own effort. A commitment from principals that regardless the racial makeup of their school, this work matters. A poster or a safety pin claiming that this space is safe becomes wallpaper or another hashtag if there is no action to back it up. And I have more. I would like to propose a more sincere investment with PEG. Where are they? And also looking at developing a team of equity leaders at the district level in which equity is their sole purpose. I want a concerted effort looking at race with our CI3T and AVID model. CI3T and AVID is not equity work. And those that keep saying that need to stop. However, perhaps looking at this model, we can look at it. How can we engage in more meaningful ways to address equity? If it's there, and we need to look at it. And finally, classrooms should be spaces where students are thriving and safe. I want our school board and administration to take our students seriously. When they speak, I want you to listen. They should not be places where restrictions are set upon their human existence and their whole self. Finally, this fall was PEG's National Summit on Courageous Conversations in Austin, Texas. Our district was represented by 7 teachers, all from one school, 1 principal, 1 administrator, and 2 district staff for a total of 11 people. This past summer, our district also sent people to Austin, Texas. We sent a bus of 40 to 50 people made up of teachers and staff to the iPad Palooza. Technology is wonderful, and it opens doors. But technology isn't killing people, nor is it adding to the systemic oppression of people. Racism is, homophobia is, xenophobia is, misogyny is. I need you to know, I need to know, our community needs to know, our students need to know that this work matters to all of our leadership, and they expect their staff to be taking this journey with them. Disengaging, ignoring, or disregarding this work is not an option. We need to do better for our children. Thank you.
Thank you. I think all board members here would agree that we need to keep working at this and that we are all committed to seeing this journey through. I don't have anybody else that's signed up. If not, I'm going to go ahead and move into board commentary. Does anybody have anything they want to follow up with comments or?
I just want to say thank you to you both for speaking. You've given us a lot to think about and discuss and ask for more information on. And I plan to follow up with both of you with some extra questions about what you said today. So thank you for coming.
Anybody else have any comments?
So recently I learned that, I believe you, Vanessa, are in charge of consent in the district, right? You meet with a nurse, I believe, from a hospital, and you go to the schools?
I'm not in charge of it, but I do.
But
I have a
you do work.
nonprofit that provides
Cool.
we provide some work in the health classrooms.
Okay, but
basically facilitating
within like
discussions.
all the schools or just a few? How does that
We
work?
help deliver certain components of the health education standards in the freshman health classes, so just 9th grade, but at both high
Okay.
schools here in
But
town.
at both high schools, okay. So what you're saying is that at least one person within the high schools that's coming in and visiting to talk about consent is tonight, because I know that on that school program, you guys didn't mention it when you called for the vote, but you guys are going to be continuing to pay this teacher throughout the year. I noticed you left that out. So that's complicit, like, in white supremacy. So we have consent being taught by someone who's being complicit in white supremacy. That's not consent to teaching. So we probably need to look into that. Right. So we probably need to look into that and get real consent being taught in the schools.
You know that. Like, it's fucking disgusting. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to say something, and I'm not sorry, but, I know the past 3 meetings, for whatever reason, I understand family emergencies, Miss Adair is not there, and that video is nothing but annoying as heck. She keeps going in and out, eating. If you're not gonna be present and you're gonna be on that live feed, if you're not gonna be present, don't be there. Disconnect. It's so, I'm not the only one. That's annoying. So that's all I have to say about that.
My name's Trinity Carpenter, and once again here, and I once again saw white supremacy work in all its glory like I see on a daily basis. However, what I do need to be acknowledged in this room, that I know that there was people, friends of y'all, that knew about this decision before we did. That's what happened. You didn't have enough respect to any of these parents whose children came home and had the courage to tell them what the hell was going on in their classroom. The principal of the school, nor y'all said you just had any idea that was happening, that then came out that was reported over and over again. He had already been suspended, so forth, and then we're here. Everyone knew about it. Everyone talked about it before it was released, and we knew he was going to come here today, but what I expected was at least some heartfelt acknowledgement that the system protected the system, so why the hell would we trust you to change anything in the district? You just upheld the very system we're talking about. I know y'all know this. You just upheld in our face. Do you think we're not educated to recognize it? Because some of us are. And there's a lot of us here tonight who has came and took time at our daily efforts to survive in this world that's also designed against us, to come to this space and be like, just do right by us. Can you do right by us? Can you do right by us when we sit in your face? And every time I get blank stares. And I actually asked my friend what that meant. And he said that's when you guys get uncomfortable and your boundaries go up, and so y'all just quit listening. I actually had to ask what that meant coming from y'all, because I don't understand it. How can you sit when people in front of you with freaking humanity and give no reaction that their kids were being told the most ridiculous, vulgar things about their race in your school district? And then you said there wasn't enough evidence to prove that, so you were going to allow him to resign on his own terms with his own benefits and go about his business and get paid while he's doing it. That's what you're going to tell me, because I know the dichotomy of this. Because I have a dear friend that graduated from my school of social welfare, the master's program, who one day, with apathy and racism in his face, chose to speak out against a white man and lost his job immediately when a white man who said he did business from the Topeka to Kansas City corridor did not like that a black man could disrespect a white man. So now the fact that I see that dichotomy, and then y'all want to sit here with straight face, and I know litigation, what about us? You guys don't care about us and what we represent, or the fact that we would have the ability for litigation ourselves? You guys don't care about any of that? Like, none of it? We just have no power, agency, or even legitimacy when we come before you. Because that's what you telling our children. That's what you telling us. Because right here, this don't represent me. None of y'all represent me. And I need that to be heard. And why would I have to come in here to tell you that? When you guys are all paid freaking administrators and know what diversity, representation, and let's say multiculturalism means. Like, are you guys not thriving to celebrate different cultures in this district? Are we contributing to the white agenda? Because if that's what's being said, I need us to speak very openly about that. If we're upholding the status quo and filing our kids out so y'all can continue to thrive and reinforce the system we participate in, that's what need to be said. Not that you're sorry, you thank people for giving you conversation, so forth, so forth. Because each one of you know and have to sit with the fact that what you did here today, you set a precedent that white men can disrespect our children in the classroom and get away with it. That's what you did. And you did it with a clear message. And so then I just got to sit here with the lack of power and agency I have and accept it because that's how the system works. But I want all y'all to know. We do matter. And it took one question of a child to say what he disliked about this district, and I wonder why ne'er teacher ever asked him the question. What are y'all teachers asking these children? Do you do outcomes? How is their experience in the freaking classroom? Because obviously it's not good. I don't even have children of my own. In interacting with the children of the city time and time again, I heard the same teacher with the same comments behind it, and you guys couldn't figure that out as a district? Nobody could figure it out? That's simple. And the fact that I called the principal of that school and she bold-faced lied to me on that day and said that she had never heard anything about this teacher is a mockery in itself. And then the lack of transparency in this whole entire process, let's get back to that. One of y'all's friends told someone about y'all decision before this was ever released to not just the parents, but to the public. That is a problem. That is a problem. Why was that white woman more important than us? Why would she say, like, that Caleb's out of control? If he would just calm things down, they gonna vote for him to resign. That's what we gotta hear? That's what we gotta hear. You wanna know why we come in here and have to just speak boldly? Because you guys are not serving us, and you up here pretending like you do. If you served us, if you looked at the outcomes that I know you have at your disposal and was intentional. I heard someone up here and say she didn't have the answers for you. But guess what? I know y'all do. You know it's real intentional. It takes some funding. Like, it's not difficult to uplift children that have disparities based on the systems they participate in. It's all there. And so I don't believe it. At this point, people just realizing they have white privilege. Y'all know you have white privilege. You experience your whole damn life. So for you to sit up here, say people are just getting woke, so black men had to die on a repeated basis for y'all to wake up and know that black folks had it worse than y'all, that don't sit well with me, and I don't think it's true. And I know it's not true. I know it's not. And so, if anything, have enough respect to respect us and tell us we don't care. You disrupt our meetings. We don't want you here. And the best we can do is come to an agreement, because that's what it was, come to an agreement with this man to resign. Because that's what it was, an agreement. You don't sue us. We let you go about your way. You can disrespect black children. That's what happened. And we need to be real clear about what it is. And at the end of the day, decolonize the curriculum. Why don't you start there? Teach our children the history of America and why they stand in the positionality that they do today. Do that. Why the hell they thriving and struggling to stand shoulder to shoulder with their white counterparts in the school district? Why you guys think you have to have more children of color to bring in more diversity? Like, I don't get it. I don't get it. I came to this school district in 9th grade, and I immediately got my GED quickly after I went to Central. And everyone in Lawrence knows what Central represents, has a long history, but it's not known for the education it gives the children. You want to know what's real familiar about Central? It was primarily black. Black kids lived on the east side. That's where we went. South Bend known had black kids too. So I'm going to need you to do better to the kids that you serve. And you know, as you guys think, before I could sit up here and talk, but like all I can continue to do to sit in justified anger. Justified anger. And every time I come to places that are supposed to serve me as a citizen of this community, I would hope that one day y'all could oppress me and do right by us without it being forced, reactionary, or forced. Voluntary service for all your constituents is not difficult, I promise.
Y'all voted 7-0. and I would like to call for your immediate resignations, all of you, and you. I don't know what that would take, but I'll tell you that you voted 7-0 to uphold something that you obviously don't care about. So at the end of the day, I need y'all to get the hell out because you're not serving our kids and you're going to kill them. I just need you to go because you don't care. I need you to go because you can't even fake tears. I need you to understand that that is a damn joke right there. That iPad, right? You bring iPads and you patch people in, but we can't talk about people's names. We can't talk about what systemic racism is, and we can't do any dismantling because y'all don't even know what racism is, it seems like. Like, why the hell do I have to prove that racism is real? Get out. Get out. We had an election, and they voted Donald Trump to be the president. And the people that I see up here are the demographics that voted him in also. So let's be real honest with that, too. And you can shake your hand, and you can shake your head all you want. That's fine. Yeah, because I peeped the diversity training that we talked about last time, too. If we're going to be honest, we're going to need to be all the way honest. Y'all don't give a damn. You do not give a damn. It has 3 meetings? Oh, my gosh. I have a license, y'all. If I did any of the stuff that y'all did to not protect the children, I would lose my license, and I would deserve to lose my license. What makes you think that y'all earned a spot to be up here to represent children when you're not doing it? And you won't even be the one voted dissent. That's horseshit. That's just what it is. You don't care, and you can be scared of me all day. I fight for my kids. I don't care, right? The only thing I care about is watching people tell me that they care and do the absolute opposite. You need to stop acting like you can pass us by, like we're going to go somewhere. Do you remember the quote that says, riots are the cries of the unheard? Why do you think that happens? Because y'all are like, yeah, we got you, no problem, no problem. But you don't care. You do not care. Because when you care about something, you move on it. Like when you hear your kids cry, you don't run to the other room. You run to the room where they're crying, correct? Well, we ran to the room where our kids were crying, and y'all took our kids and told them to get the hell outside because they're not welcome here. And not even our cries are welcome. At the end of the day, you all do not serve our children. You do not care. You need to go. And we will get, because this is the people right here. We got the people here that can do it. So when we say we can't get diverse teachers because there just aren't enough, that's systemic racism, and that's hella racist because they exist and they've been up in this beast ever since this shit went down. When you say we don't have people that want to be on the school board, yeah, I'm talking to you. On the school board, that's wrong because they're here and they will do the job that they are signed up for, that they were elected to do, and they won't sit here and try to play games and brush it under the rug and move on. And if you don't work your morality, you are complicit, and it does not matter at all what you say you believe or whether you say Black Lives Matter when you really believe white supremacy is dope, and I'm just going to keep it because I don't want to get put into a position that could make my friends not like me. There's no trainings that's going to keep this apathy out your mouth, out your face, out your eyes. I see this. I see this every day. Microaggressions are real, and I see that. I see that right now. You could give a damn about me, and you could give a damn about these kids. Because it wasn't 6-1 because you voted against it. Y'all just aren't used to a person of color coming up and telling y'all that y'all did wrong and actually holding you accountable on public record forever. Because that's what it takes, a recording. I wish we would have had a recording of Mr. Cobb so we sure could have known that it was real. Because I sure would hate to hear about rape culture and all the stories where people say, I was raped, and they say, well, how do we know that's true? How do we know you're not lying? Right? Hits a little bit closer to home. The reality is that intersectionality matters, but it doesn't matter to y'all. And again, I'm calling for your immediate resignation because y'all don't serve us, and I'm done with that shit.
well, I think that's all of the public comments. So we will move on to the consent agenda items. Consent agenda items are those that are considered routine and are adopted by one motion unless any board member or the superintendent requests that an item be removed. The items removed are voted on separately. I have a motion.
I'll move the Board of Education adopt the items listed on the consent agenda.
Second?
Second.
Janice?
Yes.
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 Okay, we'll move on to our first report, 2016 graduation and state assessment data with Terry McEwen, Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment.
Terry McEwen, Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment. We're going to report on the 2016 graduation rate. This was just released, actually, this month, so this is fairly new information for us. A reminder of how the graduation rate is calculated. A student comes into the four-year cohort when they are first classified as a ninth grader. At that time, they are given 4 years to graduate, what is considered to be on time, and they are given an additional time period of till September 30th of the year that their cohort graduates in order to make up any deficient credits. So the cohort is adjusted for students moving in and for students who leave with what is considered to be an approved exit code. Students who exit to homeschooling, non-accredited private schools, GED programs, or simply discontinue their education then count negatively against the graduation rate. So I'm actually depicting a lot of years here. So this is like 8 years of data, but I wanted to go back to the very beginning of when the new counting system started in 2009. And so the 2009 graduation rate through the current time is all calculated the same way. The blue line, the dark blue line, is going to be the all category. So this is all students aggregated together. And then our students with disabilities would be the next line that you'll see. I'm sorry, low SES, now students with disabilities. And then our English language learners. This next slide will then depict, again, the all category, and then our Hispanic students, our white students, black students, our Native students, Asian students, and multiracial students. So again, you notice, again, that the gap is fairly large in 2009. It narrows by 2015, continues about in the same realm in 2016. There was a slight dip in the overall rate, but there are some things that can't be corrected for, and we had a number of unresolved exits. I will actually go through and calculate where those unresolved exits fall and give you all like a Friday communique report that kind of gives you a feel for what those unresolved exits actually came from, whether they were actual discontinued schooling, whether they were to private schools that are unaccredited, et cetera. I also then, you've often asked, it's a percentage, but a percentage of what number? And so this next slide actually provides you the actual number in the cohort. And again, that was calculated when these students were first in ninth grade. And then the number actually graduating in 2016 from that cohort. Next, this is going to be really anticlimactic, but the Kansas Assessment Program performance results. The Commissioner of Education did this in 2 slides, and I think I'm going to do it in 3. But it is basically, if you look at how our district performed in 2016, and I have a comparison slide and 2 slides, but we're fairly flat performance. We've increased our level 4s and our level 3s. But remember, we're in a post No Child Left Behind era, and so there is no requisite percent to get to any longer. So this has now become a data point as opposed to a driving piece of accountability. Accountability now reduces to a small letter A instead of a capital letter A at the federal level, and so it is just one of many performance measures we will do. So this is the mathematics, and then this is English language arts. English language arts was interested. Initially, they used a performance measure called a multidisciplinary performance task, but in the end of the day, they decided not to actually use the results of that multidisciplinary performance task in the final results because there were so many issues with it. A lot of students were taking that particular task when the cable at the University of Kansas was cut, and so it was difficult for kids to finish it, and so they decided that they did not have valid enough results to actually use. So the state board voted to pull that measurement out, and this is just representative of the machine-scored portion, which is basically multiple choice. And then I just did a comparison of our district at the 4 different levels compared to the state in the 2 years. So you can see our 2015 results and our 2016 results. What we want in an ideal world to be happening is the level 3s and 4s increasing and the level 1s and 2s decreasing over time. We only have really 2 years of usable data. This coming year, the test will change slightly, but should still be comparable, at least statistically speaking. And hopefully, this won't be such a trailing indicator. These are results from last March and April, and so none of these students are even in the same grades any longer. So just, that's the end of that. Questions?
Hey, Vanessa.
That richer, kind of less multiple choice driven ELA component, do we have any data that like teaching staff can use that kind of shows how students did on that, or?
On the multidisciplinary performances?
Mm-hmm.
As individually, yes. But the trouble was that if a student didn't get it completely finished for any reason, it automatically scored it as a level 1 without giving any further consideration to it. And so that's why they dumped it, because I might have written 5 paragraphs and then ended it, didn't get to go back in and submit it correctly or whatever else, and then it just automatically dumps it down to a level 1, and that's why they got rid of it. But those students who actually did complete it, teachers would be able to look at how well they did on that.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I guess one more
Okay.
follow-up to that. So I'm assuming they're continuing that component next year with the hope that technology will not
So
be
no,
problematic.
because in an effort to reduce the footprint of the state assessment, the KSDE suggested and the state board approved reducing the amount of the test. So it is actually reduced by 40%. So we're going to have about 60% of the amount of the testing. And one of the things that we removed in making that decision was the multidisciplinary performance task. However, it will be available for teachers to use as a formative assessment. So any teacher could go in and give the multidisciplinary performance task as a writing assessment at any time, but it won't be counted or part of the state assessment.
Okay, that's disappointing to hear because I think ELA doesn't lend itself well to a multiple choice format,
Right.
and that was one of the things I was excited about with the new assessments. So
Yes,
it's
we all
unfortunate
were.
to hear that we're
And so
kicking
it
that out.
is, it's a give and take in order to get the test to be efficient And the other thing that was a big request from teachers across the state, and rightly so, is that they need these results closer to the time that the students took the test. When we do the multidisciplinary performance task, it has to be hand scored. So we're depending on teachers to come in the summer and score it. Well, that delays the results until the fall, and that's what we were trying to get away from.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah,
Thanks.
Terry. And I forgot to have, Shannon has a couple of retirements
I
to
have a retirement to recognize, and I apologize for not doing this when we approved the personnel recommendations as part of the consent agenda, but I would like to recognize Howard Plenner on his retirement with 10 years of service and devotion to our community and its schools. Congratulations, Howard.
Thanks, Shannon. Okay, our next report is update of master facility planning for secondary schools with Tony Barron, Executive Director of Facilities and Operations, and Kathy Johnson, Director of Finance.
Good evening. Tony Barron, Executive Director of Facilities and Operations. I just want to start off here by introducing Gold Evan Associates. They were hired for about a year ago to do a needs assessment for us on the current secondary schools, the condition, kind of the MEP and items like that, and also how we can progressively look forward on how we can build or renovate for a 21st century learning environment. And so they've been working with us pretty closely for the past, I'd say, obviously 11 months on getting the needs assessment done. So what I want to do here is turn it over to John Wilkins, let him introduce his staff, and then let him start his report. When he gets done, we'll hear from Kathy and George K. Baum on some of the mill levy and the financial part of it. So.
Well, good evening. Thank you. I have with me today Jordan Albright, Kelly Dreer, and David Reed from Gould Evans. And Luke Dietz in the back row is here with McCowan Gordon, who's been an integral part of our team. Do you know where we turn this on? Okay, so we've visited a couple times through work sessions, so some of this may be a little bit redundant, but we thought it was important to just kind of walk through comprehensively kind of the conclusion of our process to date. As you know, we've met with the individual schools at all 6 of the secondary schools, either directly with the principals and their assistant principals, or with a committee that they've put together. And we've also met periodically with the bond steering committee, which Marcel and Shannon and Kyle and Tony have been on to help guide us through this process. So what I wanted to do is kind of briefly just kind of set up some of kind of the overarching goals that we've been working through, and then I was going to have David kind of walk through some of the benchmarking and just the needs at each of the schools, and then I'll have Kelly kind of walk through what the proposed ideas are for each of them. But as Tony said, for all the secondary schools, we're looking at creating these 21st century learning environments, and some of the schools are already designed and built to accommodate that better than others. And so it really was kind of a school-by-school assessment of how we could improve those situations. And we looked at how we could accommodate student privacy in the locker rooms for all students, as well as kind of looking at deferred maintenance items, strategic mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and systems upgrades, those things that are a burden on your capital outlay, and incorporated those into that. For the high schools, we took a harder look at how to create a safe and secure campus, only because at the middle schools that was kind of part of the last bond issue. So looked harder at both the high schools for that. And as we were looking at the learning environments, it really kind of kicked in a whole discussion about creating the appropriate professional space for faculty in order to accommodate that engagement and collaboration. And then lastly, just kind of thinking about the growth, not only the growth that has kind of occurred when we moved ninth graders up to each of the high schools, but just thinking out 5-6 years from now and making sure that we were accommodating it from that standpoint. So with that, I'll have David kind of run us through.
Good evening. So again, it sounds like a lot of you have been through a lot of this, so I'll go quickly. You can certainly stop with any questions. The team definitely did a lot of due diligence, looked at area schools, and spent a lot of time talking to the principals and staff to understand what works. To highlight some of the key takeaways, I think the secondary learning spaces that we saw, both enclosed and open throughout the schools, was highly valued in the schools we talked to. There was proximity issues between those spaces and classrooms that we've tried to improve upon, both private and open spaces. So we'll show you how we've kind of translated that to a next evolution in some of our plans. Certainly saw a lot of different permutations of it. It's certainly in support of the 21st century initiatives. It's definitely moving in a direction to take what was developed with the elementaries and development of learning pockets and translate that to the middle and high school levels. So that concept is still carrying true, and as the students come up through the grade levels, there's going to be a natural continuity. The outdoor spaces, again, when properly secured and provisioned with study and dining space, are well utilized. There's some great opportunities for us to bring our schools up to a similar level to benefit from all that outdoor space that's not otherwise well utilized in a lot of situations. And there were flex classrooms or flex rooms of this nature in two of the schools that housed up to 120 students. We're going to take this idea and again kind of extrapolate it a little bit further. They found great value in these for hosting testing and not tying up other learning spaces. A lot of times it's tying up library space to do the testing, so this allows schools to keep more of their learning spaces open. They're used for faculty, they're used for events, they'd be used for study hall. And again, we're going to kind of translate this idea of these large flex rooms, again, a step further such that it really benefits more of the student learning and not just these special event kind of situations. We spent a lot of time talking about libraries and kind of reviewing what the various newer schools in the areas had. And again, a lot of them tended to be surprisingly traditional in their nature and kind of self-contained. So we really had a lot of discussions about how to not only serve those current library needs as they're evolving forward, but make the library even more accessible to more students throughout more of the day. So you'll see some variations on how we're kind of leveraging those ideas. Did see a number of schools that are really bringing more support spaces into their libraries, the media studios, the study spaces. It's definitely more of a place to house special learning spaces that need some governance from a librarian. So there's certainly some good models going on out there. Then we definitely took the time to talk to the students at Lawrence High and really find out more about a day in their life and what they really value. So we didn't accidentally erase that from the school as we renovate it, but also what's needed and what helps them succeed in their life. So we looked at classroom standards, and this is really a measurement of square feet per student, which is kind of the best practice metric with which we look at learning spaces, rather than sheer square footage. And what you'll see here is Free State was doing pretty well at majority of their classrooms being equal or greater than 24 square feet per student. Lawrence High was obviously lowest on that metric, so there's a lot more impact to existing classrooms on that campus to bring them up to the 24 square foot per student standard. So as we began to look at the translation of some of those ideas, I think the big spaces and opportunities that were affecting the plans on the middle and high schools has to do with the development of more of these kind of breakout in secondary learning spaces, learning pockets, if we're kind of continue with the same language. And then what can we do with the kind of the 21st century library, the future of the high school library, to really leverage it as an asset and a resource. Obviously, some of the campuses are getting more attention to right-sized classrooms, and some of them, like West Middle, are getting more attention on HVAC systems to properly condition the spaces. We're going to be taking a look at locker rooms and restrooms throughout all the campuses to address goals for student privacy and just a little more careful consideration to those issues that I think we're all really highly aware of today. There are some kind of access issues that I think everyone's kind of got a keen eye on, and we would definitely want to make safer. This is part of making the outdoor spaces more accessible and making the schools themselves far safer. So Lawrence High, again, is the one that's going to benefit, I think, from the most kind of, right now, insecure points of entry that you see on the diagram that'll be remedied through the renovation. Here again, you see kind of notions of what the kind of development of these learning pockets might look like throughout the space, and we'll have some more examples of libraries. The flex rooms that we spoke about are really going to be kind of strategically located within the campuses. We want to make sure that they're accessible for community events. We want to make sure they're accessible by adjacent classrooms, so there's some flexibility for those rooms to serve as breakout space in their own right, more like the giant learning pocket. We look at the library as a giant learning pocket, the flex room as a giant learning pocket. So you got different scales of these support spaces throughout. And then in terms of classrooms, not only is Lawrence High getting 2 additional classrooms, but we're getting their existing classrooms brought up to those standards, and then we're adding 7 new classroom spaces at Free State High School.
Good evening. I'd like to just go through what we come up with for solutions to those various needs, and we'll run through the middle schools first and then go through the high schools. Starting with West, some of the issues there are lack of student collaboration space and in-class breakout opportunities, an outdated library, and the lack of storage within the science wing. To accommodate that, we didn't need to build any new square footage, but we're able to actually right-size some of the existing oversized classrooms. You can see that in the lower part of the page and to the right. Those classrooms were oversized, creating breakout opportunities adjacent to those. And then we opened the library to the public circulation spaces. You'll see that as being a common theme on all of the schools. So starting to create a very open, flexible media space that allows for project and product-based learning opportunities as well as in-class breakout opportunities. The 6th grade locker commons is kind of this oversized room with few lockers in it that we see as being converted into a series of learning pockets. That's that larger space in the middle. So the media space, again, removing some of those walls, creating multiple opportunities for breakout and project and product-based learning. A variety of different study zones, from quiet zones to more social study spaces, and also creating help desk, genius bar type scenarios in each of these schools. So you can see that located in West. For Liberty Memorial Central, this is Centennial. This is, again, the same theme of creating some larger learning pockets. And then for the media, starting to open that space up to the rest of the school. So cycling through the floors, this is level 3, creating a larger space there. There was an opportunity to create a larger group student breakout space on that floor. So looking closer, one thing that we wanted to do at Liberty Memorial Central, or Centennial in particular, was to basically preserve the historic nature of that school. And so we see that we can preserve the entryways to the media center and still create some penetrations through that wall so that you have some connectivity to the public spaces of the building. We also connected two of the rooms to create a larger commons, a larger open commons. So again, you can see creating multiple zones for study, from quiet zone to group, collaborative spaces to areas that could be used for project and product-based learning. For the high schools,
Do you want to mention South and Southwest?
sure, South and Southwest, obviously not skipping over those schools, but recognizing that they already have integrated, being newer schools, have already have some of those opportunities for secondary learning spaces outside of the classroom. For those schools, it's more in the form of the pod. The budget that you'll see at the end and the base has included some allowances to continue to develop some of those areas into even stronger breakout spaces. And then also to begin to open up those media spaces to the public spaces of the building, just like we're doing to the other two middle schools. So we don't go through those in detail, but we have covered those in that manner. So again, plan for the high schools. If we start with Free State, there were a number of issues here. One is just the underutilized and non-private showers and not enough lockers within that space. They have a lack of square footage within some of the athletics program. There are some wayfinding issues and inefficiencies within the special services area in the center of the building there. Certainly some insufficient classroom capacity that you'll see that we accommodate through an addition to the school, and then again, outdated media center. So solutions to those is going in and creating individual showers and changing stalls, new multi-purpose space that you can see adjacent to the existing auxiliary gym. The reconfiguration of special services. So basically special services at both Free State and Lawrence High School reconfigured such that classrooms are much more flexible, so that the capacity of those classrooms can vary from year to year. That particular program, the capacity of one class may change radically from year to year, so they need a lot of flexibility, and then the current configurations are not able to accommodate that. It also allows for each of those classrooms to have direct adjacency to a functions space, and so we've reconfigured those classrooms. The flex classroom that David was talking about earlier, you can see that as that blue square in the middle. So that space, again, used for testing, all faculty meetings, that type of thing. But we've also centrally located that around some classrooms and created a high degree of transparency to the adjacent classrooms so that you can create a learning commons innovation center. That innovation center allowing for some of the activities that are happening within the classroom to break out into this larger flex space, again, for project-based learning opportunities. At the media center, again, we created some more transparency to the public circulation within the building, and we moved that wall back off of the main corridor so that you are creating a larger learning pocket directly off of the corridor. So that learning pocket's large enough to create several different learning opportunities for in-class breakout. And then last, it's hard to see the dividing line between new and existing, but there is a net gain of 7 classrooms within the school. Second floor, again, some of the continuation of that addition to create that 7 additional classrooms, and then breakout pockets along the corridors. So here's a blow-up of that innovation center and the transparency to that flex room. Again, this is just adding some functionality when compared to some of the benchmarks that we had visited. And then this is the media center, again, breaking down the more opaque barrier between there and the public circulation spaces, and moving that barrier further into the library so that you have a larger learning pocket. That kind of becomes this gray area between the media center and in-class breakout use, so that all those functions begin to utilize the same resources. Again, the idea with all of these new media centers to create just kind of a wealth of different learning opportunities to serve the various needs. And the idea is that the media center isn't just a silo anymore, that it becomes kind of a part of your daily activity, is to engage the space on some level, whether it's just social or whether it's a part of your formal curriculum. Within the locker areas, you can see a blow-up of those replaced gang showers and individual stalls, the new multi-purpose athletics room, and then the dashed line to the left of the screen is where we're proposing a future multi-purpose activity space that would also be serve as a storm shelter for that school in the future. This is the special services reconfiguration, again giving some transparency and direct access from the classrooms directly to that functions room, and then some movable barriers between the 2 classrooms, allowing for the size of those classrooms to vary from year to year as needed. It also places the laundry, restroom, shower in such a location that you don't have to move through rooms to get to those rooms, which is a problem at all of our schools right now, at the schools that we're modifying. If we look at Lawrence High School, I'll just go through these issues fairly quickly, but classrooms of insufficient size, you saw that kind of across the board. I think it was like close to 30% of the classrooms are actually meeting that density of 24 square foot per person or better. So that's just to accommodate new learning models, an outdated library, insufficient space for special services. So we create a similar diagram to what we did to Free State. Poor wayfinding in general. There's certainly the security issues at the school where students are at every period moving between the main school and the annex, or the main school and the west gym and auditorium. The layout of the annex is very inefficient, in addition to creating classrooms where you have to move through one or more classrooms just to get to your classroom. So there's certainly disturbances in classrooms just in moving from room to room. Inefficient locker room and wayfinding issues within athletics. A weight room that's too small. The administration offices currently don't have adjacencies that would be desirable, and a lack of storage within some of the performing arts areas are starting to crowd those particular rooms, and so simply getting some of that excess storage out of those rooms was desirable. So I'll just walk through our solutions, starting with some of the site changes. You'll see that we've started to connect the various buildings together, and in doing so, we've created a new science courtyard adjacent to the science classrooms. The science classrooms were renovated not that long ago, so you'll see a blow-up of that soon. So that's kind of an area of the building that we are lightly renovating, but not doing some major renovations to. We've removed the vehicular connection to Louisiana Street, so currently that is a major point of contention with student traffic intersecting that vehicular traffic way. a new learning courtyard that's enclosed by the west gym and the main building. We've relocated the storage building to be more adjacent to the west gym, and then also to accommodate a relocated fire lane. You'll see it says architectural gates there. That's both on the north and south sides of that courtyard, so that's what allows for this campus to be completely secure during normal hours of operation. Complete front entry canopy, so there's a canopy that was started in the last bond that would be completed as a part of this bond. And that becomes just a space directly adjacent to the front door for various activities, and expanding the bus lane, which right now the bus lane is insufficient, so they're having to use the bus lane to the south of there, adjacent to the annex, to serve the main building. So blowing up on the plan, again, we've enclosed the campus, reconfigured the annex layout, relocated the weight room, relocated and expanded the locker rooms, renovated the natatorium and expanded seating and pool deck. So the natatorium currently is lacking proper conditioning. There's parts of the deck that are needing repairs, and expansion of that is necessary to accommodate some of the needs that they have. So that's included within this. An open innovation commons, so similar to what we're doing at all the other secondary schools, is opening up that commons to the school. Because we're doing the amount of renovation to the school that we are, it was an opportunity to centrally locate the media and to make that really a new heart to the school. So it's kind of all that blue ghosted area in the middle of the plan there. We've consolidated the administration services, which again were in two different parts of the building. And then we've moved the majority of the instrument storage and performing arts storage needs to the old black box theater, which was not used, which was freeing up space, gaining back a lot of space for the performing arts areas that were previously cramped. New special services core, and we right-sized those classrooms. By joining the various areas of the building, we've created a much simpler wayfinding diagram, and you can see that we've connected the various buildings. So this just is showing the primary circulation routes. Those red dashed lines are showing the gates as well. Second floor is very similar, so we are creating breakout opportunities adjacent to classrooms. What we're not showing is really a diagram here that shows new versus renovated, but the majority of this plan is renovated to right-size all of those classrooms. So this is just a blow-up of the classrooms. One thing that we've done is we've expanded the corridor from 11 feet to 16 feet, so we've widened that corridor, mainly to create a continuous breakout area, recognizing that ideally those opportunities occur directly adjacent to the classrooms.
And widening that corridor was because we removed lockers, right? Or is it?
So it's a couple of things. One, we recognize that there was not a need for as many lockers as they currently have. In fact, some of the schools that we benchmarked had moved to 0 lockers, like Lansing, for example. So we have removed half the lockers. And the rest, and we've located those in other parts of the building as opposed to the main circulation routes. The other thing that we did is we've added in some new construction on the east side of the building. That's done two things. That's allowed us to push those classrooms out, but it's also addressed all of the envelope issues on the east side so that we have better thermal performance. And you can see that as that dashed line that's running. So that's that. From there to the east is addition. This is that open media commons, and then again in the middle we've put that larger flex space that we talked about before. We see that being a fairly transparent space that has some connectivity to some of the adjacent learning areas. In this case, it's the production area in that makerspace. And then, of course, just like before, this is serving a multitude of different learning opportunities. This is looking at science. As I mentioned, science is a lightly renovated space in this particular scope of work, given that it had recent renovations, but we did remove part of one room so that we could gain access, strong connection between the science wing and a new science courtyard that's created, and then some of the additional classroom space to make up what was lost is what formed the connection to the annex. This is just showing the relocation of storage to the old black box, which is the box in that upper left-hand corner of the screen. And then we've created new practice rooms within that same black box area, relocating them from the orchestra room. That picture to the right is a picture of the kind of temporary practice rooms that are currently in that space. So we'd be removing those. And then this is the administration area. So the yellow area on the bottom of the page is the existing admin, and then we've relocated that blue area, which is assistant principals and other administrative offices. We've also given that suite a direct adjacency to the special services, which is that purple zone. And then for the athletics, we've cleaned up the circulation and created new locker spaces for both men's and women's. There's also a new cardio location in the bottom left-hand corner. And then the West Gym, we've removed bleachers from the gym floor and raised those to the overlooking second floor, created an elevator that connects to that second floor, and again expanded the pool deck and seating for the natatorium. This is the cafeteria. So currently the serving doesn't serve the current population, so they are in need of a second serving line to serve the complete current population as well as their projected growth should they go to a closed campus in the future. So there is a small addition, which is that area outlined in red, which allows for a second serving area to be added to that area. You may recall that the cafeteria area was renovated as part of the last bond. So we did not touch that area. And then this is just a blow-up of one concept for the courtyard. Again, a connection from the main building to that to the West Gym area. We're showing this as just a covered walkway, again, relying on those architectural gates to create a closed campus. And then there'd be various learning opportunities on the exterior, so tiered seating, amphitheater-type seating for exterior classrooms, and then exterior seating that bleeds out from the commons.
So before we jump into costs, are there any kind of questions on any of that scope that you want us to go back through? Oh, no. Okay, yeah.
Sort of minutia, but Kyle, you mentioned parking lots, or at some one point, was that addressed? And maybe I just wasn't listening enough to hear that. And then I guess I have a little concern about courtyards, just because I know LHS has kind of ended up with courtyards here and there, and some of them are taken care of and some are not. I like the tiered seating. I know the pond has always kind of been a burden and an issue. but special. And there's a couple that I'm not really sure they were designed as courtyards, but just sort of ended up being boxed-in spaces where nothing grows. But it looks like those seem to be addressed. It kind of, or the courtyards are more designed with, I guess, low maintenance, growing things and permanent seating. So it's not, we don't end up with the same thing.
Right. Well, so with regards to the courtyards, I think currently there are two kind of smaller courtyards over at Lawrence High. And they're not really kind of big enough for taking a class out there and kind of teaching, and they're not utilized. And one of them's used by kind of the architecture students a little bit, or has been. So we're eliminating one of those. And then, are we eliminating both? No, just one. We're eliminating one, and then.
It's the Latin courtyard that becomes a maker courtyard.
So the Latin courtyard now would be off the media, the central media area. And we envision that as kind of an extension of the maker space. And so there is some programmatic components to that. From a detail standpoint, I think Tony's been pretty clear with us in terms of, from a maintenance standpoint, what his expectations are out there. So it's either hardscape or it's vegetation that doesn't require maintenance. So I think you can do those so that they're amenities to the schools. And currently, I wouldn't necessarily say that the courtyards that are there now are. The parking lot question, are you referring to Free State?
I think so. I'm not sure. I mean, I know it looks like some of the parking lot was cut with the covered walkway, or, how are we with parking spaces now, current versus plan?
Okay, so at Lawrence High School, we do have the ability to pick up some additional parking above and beyond what's currently there. And we didn't highlight that for you in the site plan, but it is there. It's a nominal amount, so it's not hundreds of cars, but we pick up a little bit.
We're not losing.
No. And at Free State, we've got money in there for 100 to 150 additional kind of parking spaces over south of the baseball field.
I think that answers my question. Thanks.
Yeah, I have one. So initially, when we kind of talked about scope, we talked about possibly changing up some restroom facilities in order to make more gender-neutral restroom facilities. Is that still part of the plan and discussion? Because I didn't necessarily hear that. I heard locker rooms, but I didn't hear anything about restroom renovations.
We've got money allocated to try to provide more privacy in all the secondary schools.
For locker rooms.
Either for locker rooms or kind of restrooms. It just kind of depends. At Lawrence High, it's easier because we're gutting most of the school. What we specifically go back with in terms of a solution, I think still requires more discussion with the district in terms of what that means for our district from that standpoint.
Great. So we haven't necessarily solved that issue in this plan, but it is definitely still in the hopper as something we're going to solve, or, okay.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's what I wanted to know.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Anybody else with questions?
Well, and I guess at what point does this go to the site councils to look at, or whatever, parent group there is? Or,
It's a good question. We've kind of left it up to the principals to kind of manage that for us. At Lawrence High School, we had people from the site council on the committee. We haven't. Matt hasn't actually asked us to present to the site council, but we certainly can.
Had we talked about that anymore? I mean, because you guys have been interacting with staff and some.
Oh, yeah.
At
Yeah.
least, and with, I thought some, I know, I guess at Lawrence High for sure, that committee group's been involved throughout the whole process.
So at Free State, and we've spent a lot of time since our last work session with Free State, and we've met with several people to kind of talk through what they want. And that particular flex space that you saw, that concept, a lot of that was driven by Myron. He had taken some of his staff down to Texas to benchmark some high schools that he was familiar with, and to kind of relate it to this innovation program that he's trying to do at Free State. And so we spent a lot of time with them on that, and that design kind of reflects what that group wants. There wasn't necessarily a community group at Free State involved in the process, so we haven't met with anybody from the community, and we haven't shared that with the site council, but all that's been kind of shared through Myron. At Lawrence High School, Matt put together a steering committee that was a broad-based committee of faculty and community members and administrators, and we've met numerous times with that group to talk about the issues at Lawrence High and the results that you see in the summary.
Any other questions? John, you can go ahead and finish your summary.
Okay. So since the last time we've talked to you, we've met with our engineers, and they've provided full modeling on Lawrence High School, and then looked at the impact of LED lighting on all the secondary schools. We had Henderson engineers do that for us. We spent quite a bit of time with McCowan Gordon, going back through the plans and kind of scrubbing the numbers and making sure that what we're presenting to you tonight kind of reflected everything that you're seeing in the project. And we spent a little bit more time at Free State High School. And so the costs on Free State went up a little bit, and it was hard to see in those diagrams, but we talked quite a bit about trying to integrate more learning pockets throughout the entire school and not just kind of focusing it on the library and that big flex space. And so there's a little bit more renovation that we're proposing on Free State. And so when we put all those numbers together, we're sitting, right around $75.5 million. We did move West Middle School's LED lighting above the line, like we discussed in one of the work sessions. This does include 100% of all roof maintenance. I know that note says 50%, but it does include 100% of all the roof maintenance and repairs through 2020 that were in the report that the district put together. Below the line, we have the lighting upgrades at Free State High School, Liberty Memorial Central, Southwest, and South at about $9.5 million. And then there are a few kind of lower tier MEP upgrades at Lawrence High, Free State, and Liberty Memorial that if you so choose, we could move above the line, and that value is about $1.7 million. And then the third thing we've kind of talked about is that both high schools have expressed a desire and a need for a third gym at their schools. Some of that's just based on moving ninth grade up. and the demand for those types of spaces. I think through the process, both principals felt that it was a lower tier need. So some of the things that are up in the base costs were things they thought were really important to take care of today, but they thought it was important to communicate that either now or sometime in the future, they feel like the third gym is something that should be addressed at both schools. And if we did, we've talked about that as being a multi-use space, not just a dedicated space for athletics, but could be used throughout the school and to be constructed as a storm shelter. A storm shelter that would meet kind of the FEMA code standards. Each of the schools currently has policies and procedures in place for safe zones within their school, but this would just kind of up the ante a little bit. So real quick on the cost savings, this is for the LED lighting. So colored in orange are the two schools where it's included in the base cost. And these scopes of work we're estimating would save the district $56,000 a year in energy costs. If you decided to do the work at the other four schools, you could realize an additional $97,000 a year in savings. And so that, based on the initial cost, that equates to about an 8-year simple payback. And then for the 5 items that are in the priority 2 and 3 MEP options, they vary in terms of their payback. Some of them, like replacing the water-cooled chillers, will pay back in 3 years, whereas replacing the steam boilers and so on, the payback would be just under 10. But you can see all those are in the kind of 5 to 6 year payback range. So I think if that's something that fits within the overall bond issue, it's something that we would recommend that you incorporate these recommendations. And then I think lastly, I mean, we're still working on collateral to support all this. That we have a handout of this presentation we'll give to you tonight. We do have renderings of the buildings that are in kind of a draft mode tonight, and so I didn't share those, but we will get those to Kyle to send out here very shortly.
Shannon, you have a question? Okay.
Thanks. I had a question for you guys, and then I wanted to share some feedback that I had gotten. The question came from a parent that I spoke with, asking me what is the difference between what we're talking about spending to renovate Lawrence High versus building a new high school. And my memory was that a new high school was somewhere between 110 and 150 million. Is that what you saw when you were looking at the, or what was the number that you saw when you were looking at the comparable, or what was the term? Peers, yes, thank you. The peer schools that you all toured to do our benchmarking.
I think 100 million is a good number to relate to. If you think about just kind of the building itself, and you take a 300,000 square foot building and use $250 a square foot for construction, that gets you to 75 million for the building. And then you've got all the soft costs, all the furnishings, all the technology, all that stuff. And so if you add 25% to that number, that would get you, at the low end to 100 million. And then you've got all your site costs, and so it kind of really depends on whether or not you've got to acquire the site, and then how much parking, and what do you do with, do you rebuild the football field, and all those sorts of things. And when you start tacking on all those things, it can get upwards to 150 million. So as a range, you're somewhere in there, but I don't think we sat down and tried to calculate exactly what that might be.
Well, I think that's helpful because the character of the discussion that we had was centered around why aren't you talking about building a new high school? Because what you're talking about doing at Lawrence High is so incredibly disruptive for the students that are going to be there during the time that they're there. And so I think that's a fair concern for a parent to have who's looking at having students coming into Lawrence High in the next few years while we're talking about doing this. So I guess the feedback I wanted to share with the board was just that concern has been expressed, and some of the suggestions that were made in that regard are our need to maybe do a better job in reaching out, not only just to the community at Lawrence High School, but also to the communities of the schools, even down to the elementary school level that feed up into Lawrence High School, once we are ready to start really making a decision about going forward with this and sharing and getting feedback from those groups as well. I knowing that I was in the ballpark with the numbers makes me feel a little better about the feedback that I gave to this parent that, hey, we're talking about getting a practically brand new building at the point that we're done with this for less than half the cost of what it would cost us to recreate this somewhere else. But I do think that it's a fair concern for them to have, well, what is this going to mean? I'm going to have a student who's going to spend most of their high school career in a building that's under construction.
So
something that we need to think about in the process.
Yeah, so two quick things. We have spent a little more time with McCown Gordon on kind of the phasing plans. And I think right now, the fact that we have an annex that's not tied to Lawrence High School, and we're kind of building kind of new addition. And there's this idea, if we can take the technical services area and, for a semester, potentially something that you might want to consider, but doing something off-site with those spaces, there is a huge chunk of square footage that we can renovate and add on that would not disrupt the school at all in that kind of first year. And then as we kind of transition over, now we've created new classroom space that we can use, and we transition over, then that next year will be, it'll be messy, no doubt. I think we've got some good ideas in terms of how to plan that, but in that scenario, it may only be 1 year that's kind of a mess.
No, that's really helpful feedback to have. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? I've got one quick one. Tony, I think you're going to have to help with this one. So if we, let's say we boosted, right now 75 million, if we went closer to 80 million and we put in some of those MEP 1 or 2 or the LED lights from to help alleviate some of the strain on the capital fund over the next couple of years, what from an operation standpoint, what do you see is the more, taking some of those MEP items, the mechanical items, or the LED lights? What do you think would be the best to tackle first?
That's a very good question, and it leads into 2 weeks from now when I give a capital improvement plan report to you. The bottom line is the capital improvement plan is not going to be able to afford much over the next probably 4 to 5 years. With that being said, I would strongly encourage to take a strong look at both the LED lighting upgrades and the MEP The MEP improvements obviously are 1.7, which is a good chunk of change, but in comparison to the rest of the scope of getting upwards of 80 million, it would be, in my opinion, it would be ideal to go ahead and add it on to the bond. As far as the LED, if we're serious about sustainability and freeing up general fund dollars, I feel that LED lighting is a good way to do that. The 8-year payback that they showed, I think, is reasonable. We're looking at roughly $100,000 of savings a year. The thing that they don't have in their numbers either are the many times that we have to go out and change ballast, change bulbs, all those costs. I'm not sure if they're calculated in that number. I think it's strictly energy. From a maintenance standpoint, you think about the number of bulbs that we're removing by doing 6 schools with LED lighting. That's a number that's hard for us to calculate, but a very high potential savings in our human resource power and costs out of the general fund. So selfishly, more so, I say we put it all in. If I were to add one over the other, I would ask for LED lighting, and then if we feel like we could afford to do the MEP improvements, definitely would consider that also.
Any other questions? Okay. Thanks, guys.
I do. I'm not sure it's necessarily for you, but I think more for Kyle. So, and maybe it's coming. Are we talking at all about timeline? Are we still considering April for when the bond would go to voters? It seems that's a fairly short runway. I think the previous bond we had more time to plan kind of community engagement kinds of activities. And so when are we going to, I guess, talk about that? Is that in now?
So part due, this is going to be, we're going to talk about the finance piece of things as far as mill levy, and then I kind of prefer that, actually.
Not sure you'll be able to see that.
So they'll talk about the finance piece of things, and then also the timeline. If you compare it to last time, actually, the board approved moving to a bond issue in mid-December. I think we had a special meeting, actually, and that was an April 4th, I believe, election at that point in time in 2013. Yeah. Yeah, and then what we're talking about here, though, is a January decision, first January meeting with a potential early May vote. So, but transitioning here to Kathy and Dave.
Good evening, Kathy Johnson, Director of Finance. Dave's going to first visit with you a little bit about kind of different levels of issues and the related mill levy to that. Is going to kind of introduce what a May calendar would look, or an May election would look like calendar-wise. And then I have a few slides to share when he gets done about some data comparison of other districts and kind of where we fit into the surrounding school districts and kind of our assessed valuation debt per pupil and some of those kinds of things. So you can kind of just get a picture of that and where we are in relation to others and ourselves, depending upon what we do. So I'll turn it over to Dave to start.
Thank you, Kathy. Again, David Arterberry with George K. Bauman Company. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. Up on the screen right now, you should see a report that hopefully looks familiar to at least some of you. And this is a schedule that attempts to show what the mill levy impact would be on a bond issue of varying different principal or par amounts here. And the first couple of lines that you see on that table in the middle of the page seem like kind of odd numbers, but the first number is $43,700,000. That represents the amount of bonds that the school district could issue next year and still keep its mill levy in the bond and interest fund at its current level of about 9.608 mils. And the reason you can add on that much next year without a mill levy increase is because your existing bond payments drop off over the next couple of years. So you have some capacity just because of those payment decreases to add on new debt and not affect your mill levy. That next number, the $63.6 million, what that represents is how much you could issue in bonds next year and keep your mill levy at the same level that it was at prior to your 2013 election. And the mill levy at that time was about a mill higher, roughly a mill higher than it is now. Backing up again to that $43.7 million, that number is actually coincidentally about the same number, about the same amount of bonds that you could issue, that you could hold an election on without having to first go to the state to receive approval to hold your election. If a school district is going to be issuing debt in an amount that causes their total debt to exceed 14% of your assessed valuation, you're required to go to the state board and receive approval before the election. And that the amount of debt you could issue on top of your existing debt and still stay below that 14% level is about $44 million. So that first number there kind of represents a couple of things. Your no mill levy increase number, as well as the amount that if you issue less than that, you won't have to go to the state. The rest of the par amounts there you see on that table, $70 million in $1 million increments up to $80 million, and then jump to $85 and $90 million. Those are just provided to give you an example of how much your mill levy would need to increase in order to accommodate those size bond issues. And when I say increase, I don't mean, if you look there in that first line item, for instance, $70 million, your mill levy would not have to increase by 10.977 mils. It would need to go from 9.6 mils to 10.977 mils in order to accommodate a $70 million bond issue. And just as some perspective, 1 mil on a home with an assessed, an appraised valuation of $100,000 equals $11.50 a year, or 2 mils on that $100,000 home would be $23 per year. That $100,000 of assessed valuation, I'm just throwing that out there because that's a nice round number that you could apply to houses of different sizes. A few assumptions that we used in developing these projections that I think are worth pointing out. I assumed that the interest rate on the future bond issues would be about 3.5%. When I first prepared these numbers about a month or so ago, maybe even a little longer than that, that 3.5% was well above what the prevailing rate for municipal bonds was. Unfortunately, over the last few weeks, rates have jumped up, and sort of all of the contingency that I had in that number is gone now. So if you were to issue bonds right now, they'd probably be at about a 3.5% rate. The other thing I wanted to mention here is that what we're doing with these payments on these new bonds is we're wrapping them around the school district's existing payments. So as your existing payments drop off, the payments on the new bonds increase so that overall the payments on the district's debt are level. That's the way we structured this issue, similar to the way we structured the last bond issue that the school district did. So that's sort of an overview of the mill levy projections, and you can kind of use that as you're looking at or trying to determine the amount of a bond election that you might be considering to get an idea of what your mill levy would need to do. So, any questions about the mill levies, the projections? If not, I'll turn over just to the calendar real quickly. Yeah, if you want to put that on there. This is a schedule that shows kind of the events that would need to occur leading up to a May election. And as far as the board goes, there's really two meetings, or two additional meetings that you would need to have in which action would need to occur. The first meeting that we've got scheduled here is December 12th, and at that date, you'd have to, what we've got planned is that you would review the results of the survey. and that you'd also need to determine whether or not you want to hold a mail ballot election or a walk-in election. Now, since I've prepared this calendar, maybe you've already had some of those discussions about how you want to handle the election, but at December 12th, that's sort of what you would need to be considered doing. After that, during the month of December, the resolution that would call the election would be drafted up, and you'd have some discussions with the county clerk. And then on your January 9th meeting, as was mentioned previously, at that meeting, you would need to consider an election resolution, a resolution officially calling an election. If that was passed, then after that, assuming that you'd be issuing more than that $44 million, you'd need to complete and file an application with the state. You'd need to have a couple publications that would occur, and all that would lead up to then having an election on May 2nd. This schedule is given the steps that you have to go through and the different deadlines and publications, it's pretty firm, pretty set in stone. There's not a whole lot of room that you have to move here. Maybe you could move some of these things a week or two, but probably not much more than that, and still hit your May election date. That's it.
So I'm going to share with you just a couple of slides of kind of comparative data, so you can kind of see where you fit with some districts. So I'm going to pull that up. So one of the things we did, I've got to switch over here for you, don't I? At the last bond issue is with the Finance Advisory Council, we picked 21 other school districts to look at in varying sizes, locations, and demographics, and tried to look at an array of the big ones and like local ones around us to give ourselves a comparison for benchmarking. And so the source of the benchmarking information is coming from KSDE, some of the static reports that they have on the website. They have a comparative data analysis tool that can be used. And then there's a lot of other documents out on the state site, such as the state budget documents, budget at a glance, those kinds of things. Personnel reports, SS66, and the 18E. So any of those kinds of documents are kind of good documents that we can pull consistent data from other school districts as well as our own and do a comparison that's more apples to apples than maybe calling them and saying, give us this information kind of thing. So the first one we look at is just that enrollment graph, and Lawrence is the 7th largest district in the state, and so that's what this graph kind of depicts. And then you can see the other districts, Garden City, Salina, some of the other ones that are local around us, and then kind of what we're comparing ourselves to. The next one is just a look at those same districts and where Lawrence fits into the mix of all of those same districts on free and reduced percentages in their district. And the next one is just a snapshot of what Lawrence schools themselves look like, with their percent of free and percent of reduced being the blue. And you can see our wide range from Kennedy clear to Langston Hughes at the other end. So again, it's just sort of a snapshot. It's kind of the same data that we looked at for the 2013 issue, kind of gives you a look at our demographics and our demographics compared to those other schools. And then we also looked a little bit at, and this is the most recent data that's out there, is 14-15 for a comparison purpose. So we looked at all expenditures per pupil across all funds. And this is where Lawrence fits in there with their per pupil cost for all funds, and then looking without bond and interest and capital outlay. So you can see Lawrence is kind of in the middle, or actually kind of at the lower end of some of that. And the state average is this one over here. So you can kind of look where the state average is, and then Lawrence is also below that. The next one is looking at our assessed valuation at those same districts. So you'll see that Shawnee Mission has the highest assessed valuation, Blue Valley, Wichita, Olathe. Some of that has to do with the square footage of the district or the industry potentially in that community. And then you'll see our neighbor, Eudora, and some of those that have a much lower assessed valuation. This, when you look at the per pupil and mill levy, you'll see that they then kind of shift to the other side. So as we look at the per pupil valuation, this would be the valuation per student. Again, we're kind of at that far left because we have a large enrollment, we kind of fit there. Again, you'll see Kansas City, Kansas doesn't have a high assessed valuation. They have a large amount of population, which puts them at a very low assessed valuation.
Kathy, these aren't all, these are those 12 or however many
There's
that
21.
21 that the Finance Advisory Council decided were good comparable. Okay, thank you.
Yes,
I just
they
wanted to confirm that.
Yeah. And so you'll see, where Kansas City, Kansas falls. You'll also note that some of this valuation per pupil is also where your state aid comes from. So those without a lot of state aid are over here on the left, and those that get more state aid, you're going to see on the right as well in other aspects of the finance formula. So the Lawrence Bond and Interest Mill Levy right now fits right there in the middle. We're not a whole lot different than we were in 2013. Where I talked about the assessed valuation being really low, and look at where Eudora's really high assessed valuation. They had some very large bond issue not all that long ago, and to be able to fund it takes a lot of mills because they don't have a high assessed valuation. So those districts that have the higher assessed valuation, you're going to see that mill levy has now shifted more to the right side. And again, Lawrence is sort of in the middle of that demographic. The next one is the overall mill levy. So you can kind of see where overall we fit. And again, we're kind of right in the middle. Does that kind of make sense? This was a graph that George K. Baum had prepared. And this was, again, that's kind of school district mill levy. But this is where we were in the middle. And this is where we would be if we moved to an $85.2 million issue, which increases our mill levy. So we really don't move anywhere except for next door to where we are today. And we never really changed much in moving on that dynamic. You'll see that our debt to assessed valuation is very low compared to all of these school districts, which will also indicate that we are one of the few school districts that have not gone to the state to go above that 14% debt ceiling that is on school districts. So we are very rare in that regard. Not a lot of districts, a lot of them have gone. And so you'll see that with this, if you did do the 85.2, and that was just sort of picked as a middle point, you're going to move, but you're going to move just kind of in the middle, and you're still really at a lower end. You're going to see, again, Eudora, very small district, very large bond issue, low assessed valuation. Their debt to assessed valuation is very high right now, Spring Hill, Lansing.
I would also add here that you'll notice on the right-hand side, a number of the school districts have asterisks by them. Those are school districts that have either recently held an election or are planning to hold one. And the new, if they approve it or if they've recently approved, like Kansas City, Kansas did an election, that new debt has not been added to those. So my guess is a lot of those with asterisks on it, if they do have a successful election, they'll be shifting over to the left also.
And the last one of this would be a debt per pupil. And again, we're down here towards the far right. That 85.2 kind of level would move you kind of here. And depending upon what that new issue is, if it's not the 85, it's going to be somewhere in between. If you went above it, it might move it above the school next door, but it may keep you just kind of like the mill levy did, just right next door to yourself. So those were sort of just some comparable data graphs to kind of show you. Lawrence has maintained a really good position with their debt to ratio. Our paybacks have always been on a 20-year. I don't know how many districts anymore do, maybe a 30, but some have done that to spread it out. Lawrence has traditionally not. So those are just some other pieces of information to add to your collection of stuff to think about as you decide how you want to move ahead with something. So any questions on any of these kinds of things?
I was just curious if, maybe you said this already, so I apologize if you did. Has the Finance Advisory Council seen these charts?
They did. We reviewed this with them this last board meeting.
That's
and
helpful.
They saw some of the same information and agreed we look like we're in a good position.
Yeah, I think that it's important data to have. It takes a little bit to understand it, but I think that these are going to help us respond to questions from community members who may have concerns about a price tag that seems high. If you look at how we play out and what we want to offer for our students, I think that it helps tell a larger picture that's important. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? No? Thanks. I think I am, right now, I'm kind of leaning towards at least considering putting all of the MEP and the LEDs above the line, which I think would put us near 86, somewhere, 86.8. Okay.
Actually, I do have a question for Kyle. So the survey that's going to be going out, are we putting in different amounts and kind of getting the gauge for that, of the support for that, and what's the range of those amounts?
So Patriot Insight and what they advise on this, and based on their experiences, to focus on the dollar amount that would be impact to the taxpayer, instead of focusing on the amount of the total issue. So I think the ranges we talked about was $55 a year increase in your taxes versus a $45 increase versus a $35 annual. And so he said that common language registered with people more than a dollar amount.
Okay.
So, but yes, there's multiple ranges that we're giving, and that 55 is really pushing it towards our top number. So we'll have a good idea, hopefully, based on that feedback.
The top number including all of the...
All of it, yeah. I think if you were to get up there above 90 million, that $55 a year, because if you were, just based on what Dave said to you there, 2 mills on he said a $100,000 home is $23 a year. I think most often here in Lawrence, we probably would talk about $200,000 homes, so you're talking about $46 a year. If you looked at the numbers that we talked about, I think $85.2 million issuance is a 2.3 mil increase. So you can kind of do the math, and you end up in around $50. So that's not even get to 55. So yeah, makes sense. Yeah. So we should have some good feedback.
I would like to say I would agree with you, Marcel, in adding the lighting and the MEP. Seems like the payback's pretty quick, and we're going to have to spend the money anyway. So,
I know you're more of an expert in this than probably a lot of people, but are we able to, I get quantifying it on dollar savings, and I think that's important, but I think it's also important on carbon footprint savings. How is this going to make our district kind of take a next step that does our part in kind of slowing the global climate change? You know what I mean? I do think that there is another piece of that is important to understand and know. Do you have any idea how we could quantify that?
Yeah, we could quantify it. It could be done, and I think that would be something that we do as part of the marketing. That's something. Those are numbers that we could put together to come up with something to talk about. I think also the operations, and that may not ring with a lot of lay people, but I think the operations maintenance savings is really a big deal, and in terms of how it impacts them day to day, it's a bigger impact than the energy savings.
Right.
So,
I think all of those pieces are important to kind of grasp and quantify. But I do think, the decrease in carbon is important too.
Yep.
Tony, if you could answer, is it possible for us to even pull a time period, say in a week, how many hours your staff is spending going out to do the kind of maintenance items that you were talking about, or in a month, or
Right.
the sort of a short period where we would be able to say, okay, this is how much time we're spending on this now that we won't be spending, and we could be
Right.
saving.
It's a good question. So we can reference back to August of 2013 when we started our work order system. I started a month earlier, and we jumped right into it. We've continued to refine that process. We could probably do a more accurate 12-month depiction, but we can go back to August for the simple fact of the guys have learned how to use it in the way that when we're changing light bulbs, we have a certain classification that will show that type of those type of events. So I can reference that electrical work order and probably could get some numbers
Just some-
for you. Yeah, and I'm
Even
not,
some rough data I think would
Right.
be helpful in terms of making it more concrete.
yeah, you definitely look into see what we can reference and see how many hours. I can definitely tell you how many hours we've spent, and we associate all costs with that also. So, yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Vanessa, you have something?
My memory is like totally failing me, but like I know we can't, as a district, use district materials or time or time here promoting a bond. But how is it that we, the Yes for Lawrence campaign that we that board members participated in? I think 2 of us last time around. How do we initially get that started? Do you remember, Julie?
It's a community-led group.
Right. Right, it's a community-led group, and then usually 2 board members hop on there. So we just need to wait for the community to do it, and then they'll let us know, and we'll appoint 2 people on there.
We work to identify some community leaders to be the chairpersons of that group. And then we had what you might call, I call them worker bees, but the committee chairs that came from our facility studies groups that were doing some of the committees in that community group.
Okay. How soon does that process start?
We worked on a 3-month process with that.
Great, thank you. I knew you'd have a better memory than me.
Anything else? Right. Last item is approval of school finance recommendations and 2017 legislative priorities with Kathy Johnson, Director of Finance.
So the board enclosure is just bringing back to you sort of in a final format the school finance kind of formula framework and some legislative priorities. And so unless there's some additional edits or things that you'd like us to tweak, the framework information, there's kind of 2 motions to approve that, but the framework information is something that we would need to send to the governor before the 30th of November, and then we would send a copy to KASB and any place else that you would like us to forward that. We tried to wrap around kind of the bullet outline format, and Julie did her wonderful, masterful job of trying to make it a little more of a narrative and maybe a little easier to follow, read, as well as then we took the legislative priorities, and instead of trying to put in all the finance stuff, kind of referred to that document and used it as sort of a supplement to the priorities, and then tried to incorporate the other information in that. So open to any additional edits to it, and then whatever you all are good with as far as the final version, we'll move ahead with doing what we need to.
Anybody have any comments?
I do.
Okay.
I had a couple of questions on the school finance framework. In that first paragraph, it's the second sentence where we talk about believing that educational opportunity should be a function of the taxable wealth of the state. Every time I've read this, that sentence always makes me stop, because I'm like, wait, do they mean to say it should be a function of taxable wealth, or it should not be a function of taxable wealth? So is what you're trying to say is that it should be a function of the taxable wealth of the state as a whole, as opposed to individual districts? Okay, so I would recommend then putting in as a whole at the end of that sentence. Just for me, and maybe it didn't trip anybody else up, but every time I've read it, I always stop on that sentence and go, all right, that didn't, what were they trying to get at? Then in the paragraph on educational risk factors, we reference the Rose standards, we reference Kansans Can, we reference the new accreditation. We don't reference the learning standards. And I was wondering what the reason was for leaving out
Probably none, other than just didn't.
That's right. And so I guess my next question on that is, since they're currently working on redoing English and math in their 7-year cycle, and I imagine they're going to be thinking about if they're going to keep that name or calling them something else. Plus, we also have the new generation science standards, next generation. Okay, it's all okay. So I suggest that we mention the learning standards, and then in that sentence where it says some students will require greater support and instruction to meet, and then it says the rows in parentheses standards, taking out that and just saying to meet these standards. If we've kind of already defined all the different expectations that the State Board of Education has for what we're doing. And then, this is my own personal thing, and if other board members object, that's okay, but I would suggest, and I have it all marked up, but serial commas are something that I am a big believer in because I think it makes it easier to read, especially when you have a lot of sentences like we do with multiple this and this and this. So unless there's somebody else on the board who is a big non-believer in serial commas, I would provide that in writing.
If you want to just give us
feedback.
a
Yep.
copy of what you want us to kind
Okay.
of make edits
All right.
to, that'd be great.
No objections. Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I just want to say I really love how the fair and competitive wage information was incorporated. I think I was kind of wondering when we left you with that directive how you were going to do it in a way that was cohesive, and I think it was done very beautifully. So thank you, or Julie, depending on who.
It was a village. It was a village.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty comprehensive and done very well.
And I like the structure of having the finance piece be a separate standalone document that's referenced in the legislative priorities, because it is I think that and tax policy are going to be the biggest things that they're working on that for us this year. So I like that structure. I'll make the motion.
Yeah, unless anybody else? No? Okay.
Okay. I move the Board of Education approve the submission of Lawrence USD 497 input on school finance formula framework to the governor, Kansas legislature, and the Kansas Association of School Boards.
You have a second?
Second.
Do we have a roll? Voice vote? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then I'll make the second motion. I move the Board of Education approve the 2017 legislative priorities as outlined.
Have a second?
I'll second that too.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you. And I'm on a roll, so move to adjourn.
Have a
I'll second that too.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, meeting adjourned.